at 7 o'clock. We're going to call the regular council meeting of June 10th, 2013 to order at 7 p.m. Everyone please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call roll, please. Sturrock.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Conan.
Here.
Wolock.
Here.
Ballard.
Here.
Cooper. Here. Audie.
Here.
Everyone has the agenda in front of them. Are there any additions, deletions, or is there a motion at this time?
Madam President, I'll move that the agenda be accepted as presented.
Motion by Mr. Ballard. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. Clark. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Any citizen comment on non-agenda items? Any citizen comment? Hearing none. We have no presentations tonight. We are now under administrative reports. Everyone has their building department report, commissioner liaison reports, F&G report, engineers report for the downtown sidewalk project, and liaison reports. Who would like to begin? We can get it.
No, he doesn't have a printed out version.
Oh,
Chuck's
okay.
here to give
Just an update.
Chuck's here to give a verbal presentation.
Okay.
His computer came down with the virus. He wasn't able to print it, to open the document to print it. Although he does have the statistical data, I asked him to still come and present the important stuff like the high flows or those numbers.
I apologize for that. It's a little more severe than what they originally thought as far as the virus. But I was able to get some information off of it before it completely shut down. And I'll have, probably on Monday, I'll be able to produce April's, and then of course the next meeting will be May's. But to let you know, in April, the plant took in 10.5 million gallons of water. We had almost 5 inches of rain. We had 11 rain days in April. We had 14 emergency call-outs, 13 high flows, and then 1 for inflow pump problems. We didn't experience any overflows, no bypasses, and no exceedances. We were able to contain the flows for the month. If you look back at March, you'll see that we only had 2 call-outs for high flow, and we only took in 5 million gallons. We had 7 days of rain, and I think the total for March was like an inch of rain for the whole month. So April was a pretty severe month.
With that being said, we will be getting an additional bill.
I was gonna
As per
say.
contract, Chuck and I went over it last week. This is the first time in 2 years that we've had an additional bill. And it was to protect United Water at the time, from too many call-outs, as April was. So there'll be an additional invoice on the next, I believe, the next check run or within the month.
Unfortunately, that was about all I could get off it before I lost everything.
And then Chuck's gotta get back to the plant because we have high flows right now.
Yeah.
It's rained all day.
I'll save you a call out today.
Thank you, Chuck. Does anyone have any questions for him before he leaves? Anyone? Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Are there any other liaison reports at this time? Mr. Ballard?
And actually, engineer's report is on there as we report this time.
So I will allow Andy to give my report tonight.
Okay.
In terms of the downtown sidewalk, the contractor has submitted the contract books for my review and the signature. We're currently waiting on the bond for the work. Contractor notification letter was signed earlier, and that'll be going out by mid this week to the affected businesses. The pre-construction meeting will be held this Wednesday at 10 a.m. here at the village offices. Construction is planned to last 1 week from the 24th through the 28th of this month. And that is pretty much all I have for the downtown sidewalks. If anybody has any questions on that?
Can I ask you one question? I noticed that the sidewalks on the east side of the new building, I always call it the new building in 30 years,
Yeah.
they appear to be marked. Are we going that far, or is that for something totally different? Right here.
Right over in Armada Corners.
I'll have to review that tonight. I don't remember that being in the.
They're different marks. They're like big diamonds. They have-
Those aren't our marks.
Those are not my marks.
Utility marks.
Those are utility marks, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make sure to clarify that in the brief time as well. But then I also had a small report on the S2, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We did have the bidding documents reviewed by the village attorney, and we've made the changes as he recommended. With council's approval tonight, it will be posted for a bid tomorrow morning on Armada. So we'll be going out for bid if you guys approve that.
Yeah, actually, I think that's under an agenda item on
Oh,
here.
okay, well, then we
So-
can wait for that.
Okay, yeah. Perfect, thank you, Andy. Does anyone have any questions for Andy?
I would like to
Okay.
invite any of the businesses from downtown are welcome to come to our pre-construction meeting on that's this Wednesday at 10 a.m. here in the village offices. Come on in if you have any questions, we can answer them. We do have them on a tight schedule to keep your businesses operating. We're trying to do it in 5 days, 4 to 5 days out there. Please work with us. I'm available. Call the village office. They can always get a hold of me. Hopefully I can be of assistance. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other liaison reports at this time?
Yes. I just wanted to, I put in here just a brief synopsis of our CDBG committee meeting that we had on May 21st. Just so council's aware, I mean, we're going back to one of our original projects that we originally had talked to council about. The committee has what we're hoping to do. And again, this will not go forward without council's blessing. It won't go forward without township board blessing. We're going to receive $90,000 approximately with our disbursement next year. The township will get $90,000 the following year. What our committee is proposing is that we combine the two amounts for $180,000 and pursue that land acquisition that we were talking about prior for parking. It's not written in stone. We discussed it. I've talked to the county about it to see if it's still a viable project, if it's still something that, $180,000 may not be enough. The person who we were thinking about acquiring it from, we have not talked to him in detail about anything yet, because I don't know what his anticipation would be for what he wants for it. It could appraise out for, $50,000 less than what he wants, and it'd probably be off the table then. It's something that our committee feels very strongly about. I don't know how the boards feel about it. I'm not asking for any direction yet. I just wanted you guys to know that was our major discussion at the meeting. The secondary discussion that happened, because we got to have a backup plan, because you know how CDBG works, was sidewalks over by the school, and that suggestion came again from President Cooper, who, for the Safe Routes to School, can we combine CDBG with Safe Routes to School? The answer to that is not no. It's not a definite yes. But it is something that, depending on how you word it, the problem with using it as Safe Routes to School is that then HUD will want us to interview every child that is using that sidewalk to go to school to make sure that their parents are low to medium income. So she said, there are other ways to word it, which is just a more walkable community and things like that. Those are things that we would have to work with the county with. But that also is not off the table. It wasn't a definite no, which I was surprised. I thought for sure, because sidewalks are tricky and they're not easy to do. It was not a definite no. So that was the secondary project that we kind of have. We have them both on the burners right now. There's a lot that would go into the land acquisition. It's, there's a lot of steps to be taken. We don't want to put any money towards it if the asking price for the property is going to be way more than what we can offer or what it appraises for. So that's where we're at. I guess I'd like some council feedback, because if this is something that you're not interested in now at all, then we need to know that so we can just take it off the table. I'm not looking for a motion, I guess I'm looking for just your thoughts. If it's something that you're not even interested, it would be for lack of a better term, it would be a joint venture, because both entities are putting their money in. So if it's something that you're not even comfortable with pursuing, we need to know that so we can take it off the table and put our nose to the ground and get some better projects going.
Who's on the committee?
Me, Dennis, Joe, Michael, Sherry, Harry, Ben DeLecki.
Sam,
Who?
Sam Bill.
No, she's not on the committee. They're not on the committee. They were here just as township, so they were here just to add their 2 cents into
But
it.
Dennis is the only one from the,
Michael,
but Dennis is the only one from the township board?
yes.
And you're there as a,
Yeah.
as a.
He's there,
township
no,
trustee?
he's not.
He was on
was
there
a-
before he was.
Yeah, he was appointed as a resident.
Well, what I'm
but-
saying, you on there as a building as an inspector, or from your position of the township?
Actually, it was both,
Because my first question is, are they really interested in doing
They
it?
haven't been taught, nobody's,
Mary and I agree to it. The board has not been,
they haven't been
told that,
approached
yeah.
yet. This is the first step, is us coming, is just,
I think it's a
Let me
great
know.
idea, but again,
the
well, everybody
township,
has to be on
the
board.
township's having problems spending the money. The village seems
More
to
than
have
we
more
are.
projects to spend it on than the township does. I don't see where it's gonna be a big issue for the township to, give their portion up to the village. Because we spent a ton on the fire department over the last, 10 years?
And now that's paid off.
Yeah,
So you
it's
don't
paid off,
have any
correct.
projects that are just screaming at you.
Plus, we've discussed that before, working with the village, and building this parking area. And run it by the board and see what their ideas are.
I'm not looking for a poll. I just want, I could bring it back to the next meeting for a motion to go forward, if that's a more proper way to do it. I guess I just didn't want the council to not be in on what was discussed at our meeting. Because it is an open meeting and that was public, so
Is it going to be discussed at the township meeting?
I assume that it will be. I don't know. if it's
Other
been-
information.
Yeah.
Information?
Yeah.
And I'd say that was bring it back to the next, and see how it goes at the township.
You guys will have a meeting. When is your next
Wednesday.
meeting? Wednesday, okay, yeah.
Well,
So-
while we have a whole year to get this thing rolling, I think the steps are starting now to see if it's even
Yes.
feasible. I think that's where we left our meeting, was to talk with the county to see if it can even happen.
I did talk to the county.
And all
Yep.
those steps that we discussed.
Yes.
So I'm not
And-
sure you need anything from council yet, until
I-
you know if those steps have all been met or can be met.
I think one of the very first steps, and this is my thinking, is to ask the business owner what they want for that property, because if it's still at the price that it was before or more, it won't be enough, to develop it and to do the project. And is that business willing to take what the appraised value comes out? Say the appraisal comes in for $50,000 less. Are they willing to take that? And if they're not, then it has to go off the table, because my whole reasoning for it is, yeah, we'll spin our wheels and get nowhere, and then boom, we'll have that $90,000 dropped in our lap, and we'll be going, well, man, what are we gonna do with that?
And the other thing I would be concerned about is, if we did be able to acquire that land, what would we have to do to prepare that land?
Well, you have to do,
And,
you have
how
to do
much, and
environmentals.
if they, you know, is the township only willing to give up grant money or give up their CDBG money, or are they willing to also, you know,
Come from our
contribute
pockets.
and work
Yeah.
for the entire project?
Yeah,
Well, we had,
No, I'm
Yeah.
just throwing that out. I'm not trying to put you on the
More,
spot at
yeah.
all, Dennis.
well, one of the
That's a good
things,
question.
one of the things that I had asked, the county is, say the appraisal comes in for less than what the owner wants. If it comes in for less, and she hasn't gotten back with me on this, so that's why I really haven't talked about it yet, because I don't know the answer, but is there a way, like, if the township and the village were to take some money out of their general fund, or whatever, and this is just all hypothetical, this is not anything written in stone, it's not a promise to do so, but can you do that with CDBG? Can you put in any of your own money, or does it all have to be block money for something like this? There are environmentals that need to be done. I did talk to New Haven. They somehow got a DEQ or DNR, grant to pay for a phase 1 environmental. So I asked them, how did you do that? Well, it was a resident that did it, and they're not really sure, and then they called back and said they can't give me the information. So I need to make some phone calls too, to find out how do we do that. If we can apply for a grant, let's get a grant written, let's go and see what we can get paid for. Maybe they've got one for a phase 2.
Was it the USDA one?
No, it wasn't,
No.
no.
Our
maybe-
engineer may be able to help you too.
Yeah, I'm sure they could. I haven't taken any of those major steps because I don't want to put any, a whole lot of time and effort into it until we know what everybody's willing to do, you know. Carrie told me that there was a community that just did a phase 2, and I think she said that it came in, it was like $5,200, which was a lot cheaper than I thought a phase 2 was. We thought it was like 8 to 10. So that's not nearly as expensive, but those are all costs that you would probably have to incur before you get your allotment of money. So there's a lot of steps. We need to, we would have to get some kind of appraisal done to see what it appraises out for. The other question was, do you get it appraised with the building on the property or without? Because we were told both at different times, so she's supposed to be looking into that for me. Like I said, the whole point of this is just to do it ahead of time, so we're not scraping right before. So
So you want everyone to think about it?
I want you to
We'll
think
talk
about it,
at
and
the
if
next
you've got
meeting.
any questions, call and ask me. I mean, we haven't pursued it in any way, shape, or form yet because like I said, I don't want to put a whole lot of time and effort into it if it's something that nobody's interested in
You can put it
doing.
into a good project also.
Yeah, right. Well, and I personally think this is a great project.
Well,
I think it's a great use of money if it all works, and there's just so many variables in it that you don't know, so.
When is the next time we get money, then 2016? Is it every
We
other
will
year?
get it in 2014, then we'll get it in the third year, so 2017.
Okay.
The other thing is you gotta remember the nonprofits we usually give money to.
Mhm.
You're not obligated to do so. My thoughts are they are going on a 3-year cycle where they're not getting the money. But if we give away 15% of 90,000, we're going, don't ask me to do the math, but I mean, you're taking us down now. We won't have maybe 180,000 to work with. We might have 100 and whatever that.
The trouble is, a lot of those nonprofits, that's how they.
It is. Oh, absolutely. I do not disagree
They
with
tell
that.
the nonprofits right up front that this should not be their whole sole operating costs.
Mm-hmm.
This should just be something supplemental that they utilize when they get it. They've said that over
Yeah.
and over and over on the
Yeah.
nonprofit side.
This is something our
Things.
community's needed for a while, so
Right.
we really need to look into it, I believe.
Okay, well,
Okay.
that's where we're at. I just wanted everybody to know that, our meeting happened and where we were standing. There's still a lot of questions that I don't have answered yet, and, this was kind of just an FYI, and, hopefully we can bring it back to the next meeting when I have all the answers. So,
Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Are there any other liaison reports? Hearing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Everyone has the regular council meeting minutes of May 20th, 2013, and the payment of bills. Is there anything anyone would like to pull, or is there a motion at this time?
President, I'll resolve to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Mr. Ballard, is there a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. Clark. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. We have no old business tonight. We are under new business. Sewer bid documents. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none. Sewer Commissioner Stewart, this is your agenda item.
Okay, council, I'm presenting this to you. The documents have been in the back room for a couple weeks now. And I'm asking our council to authorize to seek bids. Andy, do you want to give the timeline you were doing?
Yeah. Yeah, so the bids will be out or posted tomorrow for bidders to obtain. The bids will be due on Friday, June 21st at 10 a.m. with a bid opening following directly here at the village office. And then the bids will be reviewed and a recommendation will be given to you at the next council meeting on the 24th.
Jeff has reviewed the documents. There were a couple things they discussed between them, way above my head. But I think everything was fine, acceptable. Anybody else have questions about it? This is for the televising portion only, just so you're aware. Okay? I'll make a motion to authorize the sewer commissioner to solicit bids for the Village of Armada sanitary sewer system evaluation study.
There's a motion by Mr. Stewart. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. Ballard. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Next agenda items, to set a public hearing on an ordinance amending the village code and zoning ordinance to clarify the regulations for the keeping of dogs, cats, and other animals within the village. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? Yes, Mr. Shoemaker.
Yes, Paul Shoemaker. I understand part of that's going to be the keeping of chickens within the village. My wife and I would be interested in seeing something passed along that line. I did some research on the internet today. I didn't get a complete list for the whole state, but it's a partial list of communities that do allow chickens. Some require you to get a permit, some require you to have the place inspected before you bring the chickens in. They limit the number of chickens you can have, some don't allow roosters and so forth. But go with Warren, Albion, Saginaw, Ferndale, Redford, Grand Rapids, Southfield, Muskegon, Lansing, Ann Arbor, Flint, Coldwater, Fremont, DeSoto, Benton Harbor, Traverse City, and Rockford. Those are just a few of the cities and villages within the state that do have an ordinance that does allow chickens to be kept within the corporate borders of the entity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Any other public comments? Hearing none. Michelle Polis, village clerk, this is your agenda item.
No, it's not. This is not mine. I'm going to turn it over to our attorney who prepared this. Yes, Mike.
Hey Jeff, you in the hot seat?
Yeah, obviously on May 13th, council authorized my office to research and present for council consideration. And again, tonight I just want to tell everybody, this is just to set the public hearing, so I'm not going to go into great detail in the ordinance. I just want to touch the high points. This will give you pretty much a full month to do your own evaluation of the ordinance. It's just a draft, to do your own research as Paul has done and get comfortable. And obviously, after the public hearing and we get public comment, the ordinance can be tweaked, it can be completely abandoned, or we can go forward. But if you remember, the kind of the impetus for asking our office to prepare the ordinance was we had an inconsistency between the number of animals, particularly dogs and cats, allowed under the police regulations versus the zoning ordinance. And the consensus, I think, of council was, let's go with the zoning ordinance regulation, which was a combination of 4 animals, 2 dogs, 2 cats, or some combination thereof, but we were going to go with a total of 4. So that was the original thing, and then I think there was some dialogue and discussion, is this the time now to look at other issues such as the keeping of chickens or other farm animals and things like that. If we're gonna do this, let's take a look at that. And as I predicted, I think at the time, we identified a couple of issues that we thought, council should be aware of. And I'm sure Chief has experienced this in his police career, some of the animals that you find in various communities that dangerous animals that, you have to deal with. So with all that said, we took a look at all those issues. And first and foremost, this ordinance does eliminate the inconsistency. We do go with a total limit of 4 animals, combination of dogs and cats. The second thing we do is we create a separate category called small domestic animals. That would be your hamsters, your guinea pigs, and things like that. And again, 4 of those animals would be allowed, and they're primarily to be kept in the house. It's not going to be a situation where these animals would be typically kept outside. We also address the exotic animal situation. Some examples, boa constrictors and pet lions and things like that. Obviously, we have nothing. We don't really have anything on the books that I feel totally comfortable with that would allow us to, eradicate those types of animals that present a real danger to some of the residents. Now, naturally, then that leaves the question of the right to farm. As most of you know, Michigan has adopted a Right to Farm Act, and under that legislation also promulgated a set of regulations. I think we refer to it as GAMPS, GAAMPS, which refers to Generally Accepted Agricultural and Management Practices. So the combinations of the state law, the Right to Farm Act, and GAMPS, we kind of took an intermediate approach with this ordinance. What we basically said is you cannot have chickens and hens and other fowl or any other type of farm animals except in a situation where you comply with what the state has mandated for the keeping of those animals. So in other words, it would give Chief Smith, if he came across someone who had chickens and, as Paul said, did not have the proper structure, did not have the proper sanitary situation, anything that violated the state regulations for keeping chickens, then he could still issue a ticket. So it doesn't ban these types of animals. It allows them, but only under the guidelines that the state has mandated for keeping them in a sanitary manner. So that's the kind of the overview of what the ordinance does. I am proposing that we have the public hearing on July 8th, and like I said, see what the public input is, get feedback from council, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions tonight. But again, we'll have a full opportunity to address the ordinance, hopefully on July 8th.
Going back to item number 10, the Right to Farm Act, are you saying in a roundabout way that if you follow the GAMPS guidelines, that it is allowed?
Right, the ordinance would say if you, for instance, in Paul's example, if you wanted to raise chickens, and I know, Steve, you've done some research on this. Again, it is a for-profit activity. You do have to raise these, in most cases, sell the eggs. But it has to be a for-profit motive. But yes, if someone came in and they said, I'd like to raise chickens on a residential lot in the village, it would be allowed, provided that, if you erect the structure, Dennis is going to have the opportunity to review it, make sure it's built. We don't have lot coverage problems, that they're kept in a sanitary manner, and if they're not, you're going to be ticketed. Okay, so.
Well, going along with that, wouldn't it be in our best interest that we set some standards for this? So many feet away from somebody's lot line, type of structure, and so on, or?
Well.
Does GAMS do that?
No, they don't. See, that we're going to rely. I think, Steve, if you review it, we're basically saying that you're not going to get around our normal building zoning with regard to those types of issues. So I don't think we need anything more than we have. I'll be happy to look at it and verify that. But we're not saying you can violate, because of GAMS, you can violate building regulations and things like that.
Well, does that limit the
thinking
amount you can have?
Pardon me?
Does the Right to Farm Act limit the amount you can have in town?
you know, as Paul said, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some do try to limit it,
Well, the
some
ones-
do ban roosters.
The one you brought in limited the amount of.
Right, well, that's what I was
No
kind of getting at.
roosters
If
and-
we don't set some guidelines,
Yeah, I think Steve's right. We
I
need to set
think
up.
you maybe open yourself up to have more problems down the line. And if we're going through all this, then I'd like to maybe see that we set up some stuff so the people have a better idea of what's expected. Not that everybody's gonna follow directions. I mean,
Well, then
it
we get
happens
tickets.
sometimes.
But, well, they don't for dogs necessarily. either.
Well,
But, like I was approached by a 4-H leader. Now, they're not concerned with something with having 20 or 30 chickens to sell eggs. They're concerned with having a couple to raise as part of the projects for their 4-H club.
That's not allowed.
That's not allowed because it have to be.
That's not
Well,
under
that's
Right to Farm
why,
Act.
that's why
Well, if
that
you-
sample ordinance, and I'm sure some of the ordinances Paul
Oh,
was
you're right.
quoting,
Commercially?
you could have,
Because they said.
they limited how many
Yeah.
you could have, but Steve brought in, what was it, 5 you could have with that ordinance?
I had the Ferndale.
But anyhow, there was a
four.
certain amount you
Right.
could have.
Yeah, well, like Lyle said, that would be for profit because they do sell them at the.
Well, that's all part of the Right to Farm Act.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason
Yeah.
why
Well,
they're doing it.
we could sell it, wink, wink, I guess it's okay.
Well, you sell to your neighbor for
Yeah.
a couple bucks, whatever.
Wait, Jeff?
I'll have a couple eggs from you.
I read this over. Does that mean they can keep a llama in their backyard if we adopt this right now, if they follow GAM?
Only if GAMS would allow it. In other words, we're prohibiting it. However, if you were to hold, you know, and I'm not, I honestly haven't looked at the llama example, I'm trying to take notes. But in the llama example, if you were to have it, you would have to maintain it in a manner that's proposed under GAMS for replacement, so.
This is kind of scary.
I thought I read in the
Yeah.
Right to Farm Act that if you have
I have
something
to
that was
tree
on
for
the
the dog,
books
so I have a big
before the
problem.
Right to Farm Act went into effect, that you superseded it, so yours holds true. Now, if we make any changes to it, that opens us up to the whole Right to Farm Act. Am I right in that or not? Did I not read it?
I'm not sure on the grandfathering issue, because, you know, state law is not generally gonna, it supersedes local ordinances fairly
But
regularly,
if we
so.
set
I'm not seeing you wrong, I just didn't come across that.
Right,
so-
because I thought I read in there, because it said the Right to Farm was passed in, I don't remember what the year was.
Right.
Just say 98, and ours was dated 97.
It's 81.
81, okay, and ours was actually passed in 80 because I looked it up. So, and I thought it said that if you had something on the books before Right to Farm, yours takes precedence over that. So if we change this, then we're opening up to all of it, correct?
I will look at that
Keep it?
issue. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
I
that.
thought that's
I
what
don't know
I
if
read.
it, you know, there's not a lot of case law on these types of cases. I mean, it just hasn't been as litigated where you get Court of Appeals opinions that I can say to you, yes, this is good law.
Right.
But we'll take a look at that type of issue of
Mhm.
grandfathering. I suspect that it's probably not, because again, state law, they would have to have made a specific, you know, in the legislation it would have said, you know, almost like a non-conforming use where, you know, but I don't know, I'm not sure that's gonna hold water, but I'll check into it.
Okay,
Are we
yeah.
ready for a public hearing though? I mean, if we're talking about,
Well, the public hearing is just to get the public's input. That doesn't mean we're gonna act on it.
You can talk.
Yeah.
Chief.
Chief.
Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'm first.
Totally shorter.
If they have to use these chickens commercially, does that mean they have to file themselves as a business, get a DBA, and have an actual business to sell the product commercially?
I don't think they have to incorporate, I mean, it's not necessary to incorporate, but you do, and I think it's a relatively easy standard, but you do have to have, as Steve said, receipts that you sold, you know, you sold the eggs,
File a
for
tax return
instance.
on
And so you do have to have some minimal evidence that you are selling.
That you are running a business?
Well, it's not, well, I guess it depends. They
Kinda like a
basically
lemonade
look,
stand.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's not a high standard. I don't want to give you the impression here that they're going to have to jump through a lot of hoops to qualify for this. It's not that rigorous of a standard, but they do, you know, again, you have to have some evidence that you're farming for profit, I guess, or to generate income.
We have all sorts of people who do things in our community, that there's a slight charge. We've had people that repaired bikes within the community, people who did small engines or lawnmower repair, that we didn't make them show us that they were running a business. That's between them and the IRS, or whatever. We have people that sew,
Right.
you know, different things like that. We don't.
But they're not getting around an ordinance by having a sewing business. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Chief?
And I think Mr. Cohen's point is very accurate. When we have certain things within a residential area, shade tree mechanic is probably the thing that pops to my mind the quickest. As far as the complaints that I receive about operating a business in a residential area, if we now have the situation where the Right to Farm Act allows us to have chickens with the sale of eggs, and you put a sign in your front yard that says eggs $2 a dozen, are you now running a business out of the residence? And I agree with the treasurer as well. You know, I don't want to get into a situation. Quite frankly, I don't have an opinion one way or another on this as of yet. I will have to do more research and try to develop something before the 8th. But you know, I certainly don't want to get into a position where the police department or the code enforcement officer has to make a determination of, has somebody filed a DBA, is somebody incorporated, is somebody filing, you know, their IRS tax returns, are they technically a, you know, for-profit business? And then I don't want to have to answer questions to neighbors about, well, why can they run a business out of the home when all I want to do is fix a car or two, fix a bicycle, fix a small engine. You know, if I'm not drawing people, you know, into the house, you know, why am I being prohibited while other people are? It's just a comment on what we're looking at on some of the scope. I haven't, you know, reviewed the proposed amendment, but you know, some of the things that Mr. Bohorsky suggested are important is when we talk about farming, if we're having chickens, you know, where do we fall off with chinchilla, with mink, with alligator farming, you know. So, you know, I will look into it some more. I'll have an opinion. But, you know, I mean, I think these are all some of the questions that we probably need for a public hearing.
I just want to add one other thing that, you know, that I think is important to consider. One of the things the ordinance does do, though, is it does respect, and this is an issue that I've come up with in other instances outside of Armada. You know, a lot of deed restrictions, if you know, when you buy your property, in a platted sub, it was almost everyone I've ever looked at, there's standard. When the developer records the restrictions at the time of developing the subdivision, he puts in there shall be no raising of livestock. So we recognize that we're not superseding, which is really a private covenant running with the home you buy. That if that's there, you're not going to be able to raise chickens. So, for instance, Michael, in your subdivision, I don't know what see, I didn't even ask you about that.
I happened to bring it because I know that when I purchased my home,
right.
I remember talking with Fritz, and they prepared this document called Armada Meadows 3 Subdivision Restrictions, and it was filed with the county back in 1997. And then item number 5 says, no livestock or farm animals or fowl of any nature shall be kept or otherwise maintained by any lot owner.
Right. So the theory on that is, you know, I don't care I shouldn't say I don't care, but the state can do what it wants, but one thing they can't do is they can't undo a private covenant that runs with the land. They can't supersede that. They may well supersede other provisions of law. So the ordinance does recognize that if you have a deed restriction, you're not going to be allowed to have chickens or, as you said, any type of farm animal or livestock. Or
Jeff, isn't it up to the homeowners association to enforce their own deed restrictions?
It is, but again, a lot of people don't understand, and I think that's why I included the Q&A. The Right to Farm Act is not a sword, it's a shield, it's a defense. If we went after someone, and really this is why they did the legislation, in theory it was people were being sued by municipalities for creating nuisances. And so it was dust, odor, things like that. That's the whole reason this legislation came about. So the law created a defense that said you cannot prosecute me for creating a nuisance as long as I'm doing good agricultural practices, and that's why they emphasize GAMPs and things like that. As long as you're doing those things, you can have these products. Now again, as Paul's pointed out, and I think Steve's done some research, these things are in a lot of what I would call developed communities now, or municipalities. It's become very common, and a lot of people have wanted to get into this, particularly with the chickens. So I just wanted to mention that that's something that we did put in here to recognize. I don't think it's our role to get involved in a neighborhood dispute per se. If you bought a property and you relied on that covenant, I think it needs to be honored.
Jeff, I was reviewing last night when I was looking through everything. Would this supersede to some of our other ordinances in like ponds? If someone wanted to dig a trout pond, the way I'm reading it, even though we have a restriction within the village on ponds, if they were farming it and put in a trout pond under this, they could do that, correct? As long as they follow GAMS?
Yeah, as long as they follow GAMS. And again,
Are trout livestock though?
They
And
are.
I
They're covered.
Yeah, I asked Jeff what the legal
They're
definition
absolutely
of
covered under the Right to
livestock
Farm
is.
Act.
Opening up a whole can of
Well,
worms by
I think you're making much to do about nothing, but.
well, let me just.
I'm fine with a few chickens,
Yeah.
but the question is, where are we going here?
Right. The thing that I think everybody has to recognize, though, is these disputes are out there whether we do nothing or we do something. You're not going to avoid this. I mean, every community is fighting these battles, and I mean, I like the fact that you guys are taking it up now and trying to decide what's best for Armada. But if to do nothing, I want you to understand, that doesn't guarantee that you won't be embroiled in a fight with someone over chickens or llamas or trout, or it's out there, and again, it has to be something that needs to be dealt with. The only exemption I'm aware of is, which is, if you're over 100,000 residents, and I don't see us getting to that level anytime soon. So it's out there. We have to deal with it. I'm not aware of a situation where we prosecuted anybody on the chickens at this point, but that's not to say it's not around the corner.
Hey, on number 11 of the frequently asked questions, it says the GAMPs for site selection, odor control for new and expanding livestock production facilities includes provisions that exclude the development of new livestock facilities and expansion of existing livestock facilities in areas where zoning does not permit agriculture.
Not zoned.
Right.
Not zoned for agriculture. So, I mean,
We're not zoned agriculture.
Right. I agree. I think we're thinking of the worst examples.
yeah.
No,
and I
But again, this is good. This is the type of dialogue we need to have and get everybody comfortable
before
yes. Yeah. So I really didn't want to get too much involved in but I think it's important that as we get closer to the 8th, please come armed with your questions, concerns. If you can fax them or email it to me even before the meeting, that's even better, because then I can have answers ready. But like I said, it's an issue. We don't have to tackle it. We can simply resolve the dog and cat inconsistency. But again, I just want you to know the issue's out there. It's not going to be something we can avoid forever.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Armada Meadows Phase 3 has a deed restriction.
Right.
Does 1 and 2 have a restriction? Are there
I
any other
would
restrictions
guess
in
they
there?
probably do.
They were all built by Fritz,
Yeah.
so
Right, I'm just wondering, how does the village,
then we'd have
No,
section
or-
zoning and.
Well, we had
they
two
can't have
types-
sections
yeah, we
zoning.
had
how do you know about it?
Yeah.
Like, where's the documents?
Oh, they're recorded at the county. And when you close on to buy a house in 1, 2, or 3, you are generally, the title company will present copies at your request. And one of the things that's identified on your title commitment is deed restrictions. They'll tell you where it's recorded, LIBOR and page number. If you ask them for it, they'll produce a copy. And I'm pretty sure Mike 1, 2, and 3 probably all have a prohibition.
But should the village have a copy of that so that we know, I mean, if
But
we're
we
trying.
can't enforce them, can we?
No, I mean, we
That's a
would not
private
necessarily have standing, but they're easy to get. I mean, everything's online now. I can't say, one we might have trouble getting is the old assessor's plat in the village. I don't know if deed restrictions were recorded with those, but we have quite a few assessor's plats, the older sections of the village, and I just don't know if deed restrictions are recorded with those. I doubt it, but I'm sure 1, 2, and 3 have, you know.
Back when that was made, Jeff, everybody had chickens. in their
Yeah,
backyard.
you may be right.
Everybody probably had a horse or a
Right.
cow, too.
No, they didn't, but the Ballards did.
Hence the reason for all the rules. No.
So, Madam President, I'll resolve to set a public hearing for Monday, July 8th, 2013, at 7:15 p.m. to consider the adoption of an ordinance amending the village code and zoning ordinance to clarify the regulations for keeping of dogs, cats, and other animals within the village.
Motion by Mr. Ballard, is there support by Mr. Audi. Could you roll call? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carried.
The reason being, I don't mind telling you, I got a bunch of wildlife, and in fact, I just have 7 new babies, geese. They're so damn dirty. I can't shoot in the village, I can't shoot them to begin with. The state has created a nuisance. And they're crowing and they're howling, it's terrible. And even though I have about 7 acres, you still hear it morning, noon, and night. So I'm not for chickens and making noise. I love chickens to eat and everything else, but not around my place. Not with a
Is he allowed to have those, Dennis? Do we need to be ticketing now?
I was thinking.
It's
You know what, I didn't even want to
It's
suck
considered
it.
legal.
It's gonna be free range. So anybody who wants one, come on over and take them as a pet. You can catch a small ones very
Put
easily.
it in the house. Thank you, Mr. Wallach. Moving on to the next agenda item. To set a public hearing on the ordinance amending the village code to allow for the imposition of penalties for high blood alcohol content violations. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none. Chief Smith, this is your agenda item.
All this does is this brings us in conformance with the state law. The high BAC, high blood alcohol content, has been passed by the state. It's a new law, so we probably is not one of the laws that we incorporated by reference. But even when we do, high BAC, because of the penalties right now, is generally prosecuted by the prosecutor's office. Prosecutor's office, when we go to the state law, when we go to the county prosecutor's office, what happens is any fines, any fees, anything that's recovered from that is state law. So that goes to the county, goes to the state. So all this does is it puts another tool in our toolbox. If we have a high BAC, we can charge it out under the village ordinance if this is adopted. When we adopt this out under village ordinance, it allows Mr. Bohorsky and Mr. Bohorsky's office to prosecute that. When that is prosecuted in-house, if you will, then fines, costs, and everything are kept in-house. It comes back to the village. And again, it's a tool if we ended up with a problematic situation where we needed to rewrite it, that could be done. It can go to state law. But it gives us an opportunity to prosecute it in-house, keep it in-house, keep the fines and costs in-house. And it is something that that we have an option to already. The police department has an option to already. But by adopting this, it gives us an option to prosecute in-house and keep the fines and costs in-house and keep Mr. Pohorsky's office as the prosecutors for the village. So I would strongly endorse it.
I just, if I may add to the chief's comments, one of the things that he sees, and we often see in court is, the judges are obviously aware of the change in the higher penalties, as Chief Smith indicated, and it's never a bad thing to now be able to impose, in certain cases, higher penalties, because these people obviously are extremely high blood alcohol, and they're super drunk, and they're on the roads, and I know Chief Smith and I both feel there's certain cases that merit a higher penalty, and it helps us with the judges to know that, that we are taking these cases, with the most serious penalties involved, because they really, in many cases, merit it. So again, this is for cases above .17, or obviously almost twice the legal limits.
I'll move to set a public hearing for Monday, July 8, 2013 at 7:45 p.m. to consider the adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 101 of the Village Code by adding Section 101-5 to adopt Section 625-1C of the Michigan Vehicle Code by reference, and by amending Section 101-3 to update the penalties for violations of Chapter 101.
Motion by Mr. Audi, is there a second?
Support.
Support by Roland. Okay. Any other discussion? I have a quick one. When we set a public hearing, we cannot start a public hearing before the time. We can always start it after that time, correct? So, do you think we should make it 7:30?
Well, we've got the chicken ordinance
Right,
right
it's
before
7, so what if no one
7:15.
shows?
What about making it the 24th of June?
It's too, you can't, it has to
You
be in
don't have
paper,
enough time?
it has to be in paper for a week, 2 weeks.
Or
I mean, we can
Because
change
we
it
can
to
always have
7:30
it
because it can be
after.
late.
Right, I'm just thinking I don't want to have to sit here.
That's fine.
well, you could do
And
it the
then
following meeting after the.
Well, Jeff will be at these meetings, we usually like to have.
Oh,
the public
okay, yeah.
hearings.
Yes, Mr.
Make it
Smith?
7:30.
Chief Smith?
If I'm following correctly, if we can start it after but not before, I might suggest that we keep the high BAC at 7:15, because that may take us about 2-3 minutes.
We can't
can't.
set the other one for 7:15.
We already made a motion and it was
Make them
already
both
approved.
Make them both 7:15. Which one you choose to do first is council's prerogative.
I don't think there's going to be any opposition.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So do 7:15 for both?
Right. Okay, is that okay with you, Mr.
I'll
Audi?
accept that.
Carrie, is that all right?
Yeah.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Wallach, to make that
Aye.
change? Okay. Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Next agenda item is village building permit fees. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none. This is Clerk Polis, but I do believe it is Building Inspector Lemieux.
It's mostly Dennis's. I'll just say that after we took this off of the last meeting, the more Dennis thought about it, the more we thought we should bring it back, so that's why it's back. The backup that he provided was on the table for everybody. I hope you had a chance to look at it. I got it this morning. And, yeah, I was gonna say yours might be, and with that, I'll just turn it over to.
Yeah, what this really is happening is that most of the permits we've been issuing are for small projects, pools, decks, things like that. Those are the lion's share of our permits. Every now and then, we just got a permit here on Thursday or Friday for a T-Mall enclosure. It's a $20,000 value. It's real easy to figure, we make money on it, it goes in the building fee. We don't get those very often. But the problem is we're having the small projects that don't really bring in enough money to pay for the department, like administrative, like our code books, our computer programs, things like that. The use of Becky's services, phones, things like that. So some of the fees, the recently adopted fee schedule that the council adopted, kind of doesn't really generate enough money on the low end. So what I've been adding a few dollars into it when I charge for a permit, I charge like a minimum of like $90. And because some of these fees will only charge $75 for something up to $1,000, like a pool. That generates, usually it's 2 inspections, at least $5 left over for the building fund. So we've been charging $90 instead of $75. So I wanted council to be aware of that, trying to cover the administrative costs too, so we don't go into the red. And then with that, I'm asking if council would consider charging a minimum of $100 for 2 inspections. What basically we would do is charge for each inspection. If it's 1 inspection, we would charge a minimum of $75 for the permit. That would leave $35 left over towards the building fee. 40 would go to me, because I charge 30 for each inspection and then 10 to issue a permit. If it's 2 inspections, I propose a minimum of a $100 fee, and that would leave $30 left over for the building department.
This was actually brought up through the auditors, that they needed a council motion on this, so that's why it originally came, and then when we passed the last resolution adopting the state fees, Dennis thought that that was gonna cover it, but the more he looked into it, the more it didn't. So all the auditors needed, if council so chooses, is just to allow Dennis to deviate from the state Michigan permit fee schedule at his discretion to cover the village, cost of the village associated with that permit. So that's came from the auditor, that's what they wanted. So that's why this is coming up. So, I mean, the state fees that we passed is right now what we're allowed to collect, so.
Okay, Jeff wants to speak.
Yeah, I agree with Dennis wholeheartedly that if we aren't covering our costs, we've got a problem, obviously. That's to me kind of a no-brainer. We should cover our costs, otherwise we are going in the red. But I'm a little concerned about having passed the new fee schedule and then saying it's okay to deviate from that, because the thing that's going to get Dennis in trouble is he deviates for one and he doesn't deviate. That's when the auditors are really going to get upset, and as well as some of the people asking for permits. So my only suggestion would be maybe to take a look. I mean, it's not, we just did that, I believe, Michelle, by resolution though, right?
Yeah,
we didn't. So I think I would work up amendments to that resolution and implement it, just approve an amendment to that schedule of fees, because I don't like the idea, or what's going to get us in trouble is if someone comes in and say, I don't know why I paid $90, you show them the fee schedule that says it should have cost you $75, and then, but I added a little bit, that's just, you just can't do that, so.
Well, we can work on it and bring it back. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Like I said, primarily, it's the low-end fees where it's $1,000 to $2,000. That's where we have very little coming in.
And we are not beholden to that state schedule. I mean, this is one of the few communities that follows it probably to the letter. I mean, as you pointed in your memo, Dennis, and that's a good point. Every community has different costs, and you can set your fees to reflect your individual costs. So I do think it's really important. If we adopted the schedule, we did it for a reason, and if it needs amendment, let's amend it. But I don't think we should deviate without having it in writing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Jeff and I can work on it before the next meeting.
We'll make a proposal for next month. I'll work with Michelle on it.
Next meeting.
Next meeting? Okay.
To meet with me.
The next month it's going to be, we already have 2 public hearings on that day. It's going to be already a pretty loaded agenda.
Okay.
So, okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, and if council remembers, this was coming up with the last state, I mean, it was on the same agenda as the state fees, so, but, Dennis asked me to pull it, so.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, moving on to the next agenda item is the request for crack seal bids. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none. DPW Supervisor Saratowski's not here, so I do believe it falls to your clerk.
It actually should fall under the streets.
I'll take it.
Do you want to take it?
All right, perfect. Sorry.
Every year we do some crack seal on the village streets, so with that being said, it was out to allow the DPW supervisor to seek bids for 4,000 linear feet of crack seal.
Motion by Mr. Ballard. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. Clark. Any other discussion?
Lyle, do you know what areas he's concentrating in?
No idea.
Okay.
The places that are correct.
Probably not
everywhere.
Yeah, probably not all.
Sure, 4,000 feet's enough.
That's what Ed gave
That's
me.
what we budgeted for this year.
Yeah, that's what Ed gave me.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Next agenda item is request for catch basin cleaning bids. Are there any public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none, I'm just gonna hand this right over to you, Mr. Ballard.
Thank you very much. Every year we do some catch basin cleaning. This year we're gonna do 200 of them. I'd like to do 400 of them, but we can't do it this year, so we do 200 a year.
You only have 220.
Yeah, we only have 200.
220, well, I'd like to do 400, but that's okay.
You wanna do another community?
Sure. Actually, what we need is, we've got to do these 200 this year, so I resolved to allow the DPW supervisor to seek bids for catch basin cleaning.
Motion by Mr. Ballard. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Conan. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried.
That is not limited to 200, that's the number that Ed gave me, but if there are 220, I'm sure that he's going to be cleaning all 220, but the motion doesn't specify an amount. Well, we should clean 400, I just don't know where we're doing with the other 180.
For upcoming agenda items, we have the CDBG lot and we have the village building permit fees already. Are there any other upcoming agenda items anyone would like to add?
We'll set the tax millage next meeting.
I'm sorry?
You'll be setting the tax millage next meeting.
Tax millage? Any other upcoming
I'm
agenda
not sure
items?
what date, is that the right date, will be before the next meeting? Or the
The
sewer?
opening of the
The
bid?
bids should be open by then, and we should be able to award
The
it.
24th. Yes, that is, well, your bid open.
21st.
Yeah,
is
you,
bid open.
24th is the review at our meeting, so you want to add that,
So
right?
Can I add that to the meeting,
Mhm.
please?
Sewer bid award, is that right? Okay. Any other upcoming agenda
If
items?
the crack seal bids come in and the catch basin cleaning comes in, we'll be awarding that night too.
If they come in, though,
That's
that's,
right.
I don't know when they're coming.
Okay. Any other agenda items? Hearing none? Does anyone, are there any outstanding citizen comments? Any citizen comments? Hearing none, any council comments?
Concerts in the park,
Yes.
Wednesday.
The Armada High School Choir. The chorale, yes, by Rachel Ulinski. Yep. Any other council comments or community events? Hearing none, the time is 8:04. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Wallach. Is there a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. Audi. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.